Hello there, and welcome to the Abundance Self Podcast, a podcast where we talk about everything there is to learn and to know about what it truly means to have life and life in abundance. My name is Sharon Chabai, and thank you so much for tuning in. Hello. Happy New Year. I hope you are well. Ooh, it's a very first episode of 2024, and I'm honestly so excited, super excited. Happy New Year. I hope your 2024 is going on okay. I hope that, some of the resolutions, some of the prayers, some of the things that you're hoping for this year will truly come to pass in accordance to God's will. And I hope that, this will be a better year than 2023. So yes, welcome, Karibu Sana, bienvenue. If this is your very first time here, my good name is Sharon Chabai. And like I always like to say, I want to hope and believe that by the time you're done listening to this episode, that you will have made a decision to become a part of the Abundance Self community. So yes, welcome to the Abundance Self podcast, and I'm really looking forward to the many good conversations and the community that we will build this year, the growth that this podcast will experience, the growth that I pray you will experience from this podcast and beyond. So yeah, as per usual, this year I think for me it has not started out exactly how I thought or envisioned it would be, even just comparing it to last year. You know how my 2023 started and how 2024 has started out for me. I think it's just been like literally the year started and I hit the ground running in terms of work and a lot of many other things. And I know for a fact I had said that we wouldn't take a break from the podcast, but I think it's just been a week or so, and it's just been, I don't know, 2024 has really started out a bit rough, a bit tough, but either way, I do not want it to ruin the rest of the year and what I envision it to become. So in our previous episode, if you haven't tuned to it yet, we were talking about, are you ready for 2024? Now, I know already at the time of, releasing this episode, it's already been, I think, 2 weeks now into 2024, but it's never too late to actually sit down and ask yourself whether or not you are ready for the new year. The thing about New Year's is that usually it comes with a lot of pressure, which I don't really like at all. And if you have subscribed to our mailing list, then I shared that, during this time of New Year, a lot of very many people are, thinking about their resolutions, setting out their goals and plans and dreams and ambitions. It's just this whole season of new beginnings, new things, new year, new me, those kind of things. And I mean, while I am not here to say that that is wrong, but there's usually this pressure that it comes with, and literally it's like everyone is expecting you to have made resolutions. Everyone is expecting you to, behave in a certain way. You go to the gym. I don't even know what it might be. And sometimes it can really be overwhelming because you could be like, okay, what resolutions did I make last year and did I even see them to fruition? Because sometimes we find ourselves in spaces where we are doing things because everyone is doing it, but not because really it is something we have sat down and intentionally wanted to do it. And I know even on social media, we have had a lot of memes where people are saying, I think I'm just going to light up fireworks again so that I can start my new year. Actually, I saw someone writing on Twitter that in case you hear fireworks, it's just me restarting the new year because it's a place I've missed a step. So, I mean, these things, of course, they usually come out as jokes, but at the end of the day, there's some truth to it. So just in case you're in that place where you're not really sure how 2024 is going to look for you, or how to best plan for 2024, then I would recommend that you go listen to our previous episode where we were talking about, are you really ready for 2024? So it's just basically about taking a peep at how 2023 has been or was, and just doing an year audit where you're like, okay, this is what happened in 2023 in terms of my family, in terms of my career, in my relationships, my money, whatever it is you might want to look at, and then see, okay, what are you going to bring in to 2024? What are you going to leave behind? Because at the end of the day, it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to start over. And something that I like saying, or something that has always held so much truth for me, is just the simple fact that waking up every morning is just a new chance, to start all over again. So it doesn't matter what how yesterday looked like, whether you failed, whether you missed a step. The fact that you have woken up in the morning, you have breath in your lungs, is simply another chance to do it right with God, with yourself, and everything around you. So I truly hope that episode will add value to you. And like I always like to say on here, is that you can either press pause right here, go back and listen to that episode, or you can finish listening to this episode and then go back and listen to that particular episode. So yes, so in the spirit of new beginnings, again, if you have subscribed to our mailing list, I believe you already know what my focus is going to be this year. And I know I keep saying, if you haven't subscribed to our mailing list, which I do encourage you to do so. It's free, absolutely free. And just because you haven't subscribed doesn't mean I'm not going to tell you. But even before that, I know even during this period when, it's been a bit quiet on our socials, and it's been intentional in the sense that I have just really wanted to take some time to be still, just to enjoy the stillness where I am not really doing anything. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, of course, I have put the podcast aside and the vision that I have for it. I mean, every day, literally, I wake up and all I'm thinking about is, how am I going to show up for this podcast? How am I going to show up for my listeners? How am I going to show up for the entire TAS team and what have you? So even while we were quiet, I think one of my biggest resolutions for 2024 that I did last year, as I was reflecting on my year, is that I wanted to have the Abundance Self podcast on YouTube. And it is something I had researched on because, of course, at the moment, this podcast is an audio only kind of show. So I was still thinking, is there a way I can upload, this show rather, on YouTube? And I am happy to announce that I was successful after racking my brain, reading and watching a lot of, I think, videos on YouTube on how to submit my RSS feed to YouTube, and even just going through that whole process of scanning, I think, my ID. I was just like, come on, YouTube. But so finally the Abundance Self podcast is on YouTube, and that is truly a huge benefit. I don't know. Yeah, it is a huge benefit because then it boosts the discoverability of the show, and it also helps me to lay the foundation even as I plan to start doing or thinking about video content. So just in case you are listening to this right now, you can find the Abundant Self podcast everywhere you get your podcast. I know last year I was saying you can tune into the podcast everywhere you get your podcast except YouTube. But now it is official. You can tune in to the Abundant Self podcast everywhere you get your podcast. So even on YouTube, our audio episodes have been uploaded on YouTube. And even this episode, you can tune in to it as well on YouTube. So yeah, without much further ado, allow me to just get right into the topic of discussion today. And that is, I felt it was important for me to talk about the power of showing up. and how just building authentic and intentional communities can truly help you live a life of abundance. Now, just in case you're new here, the foundation of this show, the foundation of this podcast is based off of John 10:10, where God says that the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy, but I have come that you may have life and have it in full. Now, in today's world, we have so many definitions of what it means to live a full life. Everyone is always, almost everyone is always posting on social media talking about how, YOLO, you only live once. People doing whatever it is they're doing and captioning it as living my best life, living my life to the fullest. Now, for the longest time, this question used to bug me a lot because I used to ask myself, okay, what does it mean to live a full life? What does it mean to say YOLO? Because, it's easy to say a phrase because it rolls off so easily off your tongue. It's easy to just jump onto the bandwagon because this is trendy, this is fun. We even want to put it on a t-shirt, on a mug. But do we really understand what that means? Yeah? What does it mean to live a life of abundance? Is it just about wealth, having all the money in the world, having all the riches in the world? What does it mean when God says that he has come to have life and have it, that he has come that we may have life and have it in full? And the beauty about this is that the minute I started asking myself these questions, I realized that very many other people are talking about it too, or rather, very many people are talking about aspects of living a life of abundance, especially God's way, right? And it's even so interesting that as I'm recording this today, someone read the same verse to me in a devotion session. And I was just like, I don't know. It's just a message that has kept being pressed on in my heart. And I believe that I have the responsibility to also press on the same message to you. So if you go back and listen to the episodes that we have had from episode 1, where we lay the foundation of the podcast, where we start talking about what is the difference between scarcity and abundance, where we talk about some of the things that hinder us from living a life of abundance and some of the things that enable us to live a life of abundance, then you will begin to understand, you'll begin to look at this whole living my life to the fullest, quote unquote, in a very different perspective. Now, I always like to say that I don't have all the answers. I am a human being. I have my own shortcomings. I have, places and aspects where, I fall short. But I think something that I have always prayed and asked God for is that every time I sit on here to speak to you, is that I would be speaking truth. And I know sometimes I even catch myself. Sometimes when I go back and listen to episodes, I'm like, wow, how did I even come up with that? Because I know out of my own understanding, I don't think I can come up with such wisdom, to be very honest. So if you're new here again, you can go back and listen to our previous episodes and just get a feel of what it means to live a life of abundance. Again, we do not have all the answers here, but if you have any questions, if you have any feedback, any pushback whatsoever, feel free to share. You can reach out to us on our email, you can reach out to us on our phone number, all which have been linked in our show notes below. So having said that, I felt it was important to say that. Having said that, I felt this year that it was important for me, even as we begin the new year and set the pace for the new year, to just start focusing on, again, what hinders us from living a life of abundance and what enables us to live a life of abundance. And I think one of my biggest lessons in 2023 is that the communities that we build around us really have a huge impact on the quality of life that we lead. Now, if you've listened to a previous episode, then you know, I think I have mentioned it over and over again, that, our lives are a system. And I know I love talking about systems where they're made up of so many moving parts. It's literally like a car. If the steering wheel is not working, then the car is not moving. If one tire is not working, the car is not going to move. So the same thing with our lives is that our lives are made up of different parts. Whether it's our mental health, whether it's our spiritual health, our emotional intelligence, our relationships, our finances, our careers, whatever it is you might want to call it, our physical health. All this combined have a huge impact on the quality of lives that we lead and live. And something that I learned last year is that community, friendships, relationships, they have a huge impact on the kind of lives that we lead. It doesn't matter if you're an introvert. It doesn't matter if you're not good with people. It doesn't matter if you don't necessarily like being in spaces where, very many people are, which is, I don't know. I think it's okay because it's your personality. But at the end of the day, like I have said countless times on here on the podcast, is that no man is an island. None of us was created to live by ourselves. If that was the case, then God would have only created Adam and let him just, live with the animals, right? And when I realized that, I started asking myself, what is it? How am I contributing to even the quality of the community and communities that I am in? So last year, I think when I was doing my audit for 2023, I remember telling myself, from this moment forward, even as I enter into 2024, I want to intentionally show up for my community. Because most times we find ourselves in spaces where we are waiting for someone else to create the safe space that we need, and maybe we do not really have the capacity to do so. But if we do have the capacity to be able to create that space for people, then let's do it. And even as I'm saying this, I think I've remembered that even when I was starting this podcast, I remember saying that this podcast is not for me. And I've mentioned this to my friends before, where I have said that what I do here on the podcast is not for me. It's really not for me. And that is why even on days when I don't feel like recording, I remind myself, Bachabai, this is not for you. You're not doing this for yourself. You're doing this because there's someone who's listening on the other side of this headphones, AirPod, that needs this information, that might be transformed, that might be elevated from your content. And when I realized that my life is not my own and that I am here to serve the purposes of He who created me, I am here to, make an impact in the lives of those who are around me, then it became easy for me to show up. And you see, even just showing up in itself means that you need to know, okay, why do I need to show up? And for me, the main why is because I know that the community, the relationships, the spaces that I create, the spaces that I put myself in have a huge, huge, huge impact on the quality of life that I lead. And I truly experienced this so much in 2023. I remember there was a point I just sat down and just told God, thank you, because you have brought me in spaces where I am appreciated, I am seen, where I can add my voice and value to that space. Not necessarily because I am looking for any sort of acceptance, not because I'm looking for someone to validate me, but because my voice is needed here. And I've just remembered I was reading an article recently from our LinkedIn newsletter, that is The Confused Creator. And I remember telling a story where last year I got the opportunity to be in a space of creatives and I felt really intimidated. But I remember leaving there saying, or rather being in that moment where I caught myself feeling intimidated. And I remember saying, I deserve to be here. I deserve to be in the presence of greatness. I belong here. I am meant to be here. And what that means is that I will show up in my work as a podcaster because I now have a community to look up to and say, you know what? I may not necessarily want to be like this person, but having seen how they have stayed the path, how they have shown up every single day for their craft, every single day for their purpose, and seen the kind of results it has brought them, then I am going to show up for my purpose just as much. If I have to travel all the way home to record an episode, I will do that. If it means I need to sacrifice some hours of sleep, I will do that. If it means I need to draw boundaries in certain spaces or with certain people, I will do that because I need to show up. And I remember my guiding verse for 2023 was Isaiah 60 that says, "Arise and shine. Arise and shine, for your time has come." It's time for us to show up. And for me this year, I specifically want to show up for you. You who is a valued member and part of my community. I want to show up for you. And as I wrote in my newsletter, it could be through an episode like this one. It could be, having a cup of coffee together. It could be mentorship where showing up for me would mean mentoring someone and helping them, discover what it is their purpose is. If that is what it means for me to show up, then I will show up. Because I have had people show up for me. I have had people sacrifice their time for me, from my parent, from my siblings, from my friends, from just the intentional communities that I have built. I have had people show up for me. I have had people who have offered help when I didn't even know I needed it. People who have added value to my life. And now I want to do the same for you. And there's a particular verse in Proverbs that says that he who waters will also be watered. And that encourages me because I know that when I take time to show up and to pour myself into my community, into the things that I do and doing them as unto the Lord, then it doesn't take anything away from me. Or in fact, what it does is that it just becomes an infinity pool, an infinity well, where I am pouring into my community, and in turn, I get a fresh wave of creativity, of wisdom, of ideas, of new ways in which I can add value. Because the truth of the matter is, when God says that when you give, you will receive, it doesn't necessarily mean giving of money, giving of time, giving of knowledge, giving of ideas, giving of value. Whatever it is you give, you will automatically receive. And it's such a beautiful paradox because it just shows how none of us was created to be an island. None of us was created to exist by ourselves. Whatever it is we have, whatever experiences we have gone through, whatever it is God has put in us, even that dream that God has put in you, you might think it's for you, but it's not. It really isn't. It really isn't. And it's so beautiful because sometimes we go through experiences. I think I was even talking to my friend about this, and she was telling me, I think she had gone through something, and then someone called her to, I think, to advise her on the same thing. And at that moment, she realized that, yes, when she was going through it, it was painful, but she needed to go through it because someone would, the experience she went through, the lessons she learned, would be needed by someone else. Because I think it's even reminding me of that moment where you find you're going through so much and then you're really asking God, why me? Why am I going through all this? Kwani hunipendi? You don't love me? Mbona napitia hizi mashida zote? But I mean, when we later on choose to trust in Him, when we later on choose to see the bigger picture, we realize that yes, at that moment it was painful, but we needed to go through, maybe you needed to go through such a situation so that you can be the one who is speaking hope in the life of another person. Yeah. So for me, it's showing up. I really want to show up this year. And I know it's still in alignment with arising and shining. It's still in alignment with putting myself out there. But I really want to intentionally add value into the lives of my community this year. And all the same, it's also the same, and a year when I also want to heal from a lot of hurt, a lot of pain, a lot of disappointments that I have been carrying around for a long time. And it's so interesting that my friend again was telling me, I think it was yesterday when she was telling me that if you allow it, relationships truly can heal us. And for me, I feel like these two, me wanting to show up for my community and me wanting to heal, being, they are two different things, but they sort of marry each other because, again, he who waters others will also be watered. So for me, showing up for my community, adding value to the lives of other people might be the very thing that also heals my heart and gives me the peace of mind that, God intends for me. Because I know sometimes you always look at healing and want it to look in a certain way, shape, or form. Or we always want, to pray and tell God, please heal me, remove this pain from me. But again, there's work that needs to be put in as far as that is concerned. So who knows, by showing up for my community, showing up for you who's listening to this, and just intentionally adding value in your life, whether you are a friend of mine, whether you're a listener, whether we've met or never met before, whether this is the first time you're hearing my voice in your life, I want to add value. And I want you to let me know, how can I add value in your life this year? Like I said, it doesn't even have to necessarily be through the podcast. This would be one of the many ways that I add value to your life. But I'd also like to know, how do you want me to support you in your journey? Right? Maybe you want to start a podcast. Reach out to me. I mean, I'm just 1 year old. But even in my 1 year of experience, there is a level of value that I can add to you and for your purpose. Maybe it is something you want to talk about. Reach out to me. Maybe you want to go out for coffee. Mostly, I think for now, if you're in Kenya, then let's go out for coffee. Let's talk, right? And let's see how we can add value in the lives of each other. Because that has a huge impact on the quality of life that we lead. When we have people holding us up and holding us down, when we have people supporting us, when you have people who believe in our vision, I mean, that is all we need. I mean, look at Jesus. He had a vision and he had a purpose, but he still needed those 12 disciples and the many followers who ended up being evangelists all around the world to keep that message going, right? Never can we truly, I think, get where we are going on ourselves. Even if we just need one person to believe in our vision, to believe in what it is we have inside of us, that is all we need. And for me, I think I am truly blessed by the community that God has surrounded me with. And there are times it's easy for us to take such things for granted. Sometimes it's easy for us to lose sight of, what this friendship has done for me, what this mentorship, maybe it's just even a relationship with a mentor, maybe it's your marriage, maybe whatever it is. Just allowing God to use the people who are in your life to bring out the purposes for which He has for you, right? And it's truly amazing. It's truly amazing the kind of things we can do together. So for me, that is my vision and my hope for the year. And I think even as I mentioned on our social media, this year, I am also praying that I will stand on the other side of God's promises. I remember in a previous episode when I was talking about what does it mean to live a life of abundance. And I think we're talking about walking in obedience. And I remember saying that walking in obedience, or rather standing on the other side of God's promises, requires you to walk in obedience. If you want to experience the promises of God fully, then they just can't drop on you just like that. It is important that you walk in obedience, walk in truth, and constantly seek Him to guide you, to show you the path in which you want to follow. So this year, truly, it is my prayer that we will walk on the other side. We will stand on the other side of God's promises. All the promises He has for us. Everything that He has spoken to us and for us, that we will experience that not only in 2024, but all the days of our lives. All the days of our lives. Yeah, so feel free to reach out to me. Let me know how can I support you this year? How can I show up for you? How can I add value to your life? How do I do that? How do I do that? Please do not hesitate to let me know. Do not hesitate to reach out to me, whether it's on phone or on WhatsApp, on email, on our social media. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm not promising that I will be able to, just what I'm trying to say is that I will do my best where I can, because it truly can be impossible for us to show up for every single person. But at the end of the day, I will do my best where I can. And sometimes even showing up for people could mean referring you to someone else, or saying, okay, I may not be able to add value to you myself, but I know someone else who can. Or maybe I think this podcast or this show could really help you figure that out fully. Yeah, I think that would also be a way for me to show up for you. So it might not really be directly, but however way I can, whether it's directly, indirectly, big or small, I truly hope to show up for you this year. So yes, that's just about it for today's episode. I wanted to keep it short and sweet for the beginning. And once again, truly, I am super, super excited to have you with us on the very, very first episode of 2024. I'm looking forward to a successful year. I'm looking forward to a blessed, to a glorious, to an abundant year. Living and walking and standing on the other side of God's promises. So if you'd like to get in touch with us, like I said, I have left our contact details, my contact details on the show notes. Feel free to check out our social media channels, that is on Instagram, on X, and on Facebook. We are at The Abundant Self Podcast. You can also check out my personal social media as well at Shabai by Sharon. I think across all social media channels, that is Facebook, Instagram, and X. And now again, you can also listen and tune in to the Evan and Self podcast everywhere you get your podcasts, and now on YouTube. We are working to start, I think, growing our YouTube channel, which I know for a fact is going to need a lot of work. But again, this is the year of showing up for community and showing up for our purposes. And importantly, or rather most importantly, if you find our content valuable, if you enjoy what we do here on the podcast, then I kindly request that you consider supporting the podcast using our till number, more so if you're in Kenya. I have left a link, or rather I have left the details to that on our show notes. So feel free to support us however way you can. I think this year I'm really looking forward to investing in more equipment in as far as my podcast is concerned, and start working on just having a proper recording setup than what I have been using for the past year. So your support will go a long way. We also have a WhatsApp channel, so feel free to join the channel as well. I don't think we post as much. We only post when necessary. And finally, even as I close, is that you can also consider subscribing to our mailing list. I have left a link to all that in the description notes. And of course, today we'll also just be asking, how can I show up for you this year? Feel free to let me know in our poll on Spotify, and you can also, I think, comment on YouTube, and just reach out to us on any other platform, just in case you're listening to this on any other platform other than YouTube or Spotify. So before this ends up, before this outro becomes an hour-long episode, allow me to say thank you for tuning in up until the very end. I wish you a blessed 2024, and I look forward to hearing you in the next episode. And before I close, like I always like to say, if you remember absolutely nothing else from today's episode, I hope you remember that you have been called to have life and have it in abundance, and that I am rooting for you. Until the next one, bye-bye.